Welcome to our International Expeditions webinar, 5 Voyages for Adventurers. And here to introduce our topic and our 2 other guest speakers is Emily Harley. Emily, over to you.
Well, thank you, Lee, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. I'm especially excited to talk about these adventurous voyages, not only because they're to some of my favorite places on Earth, but also because I've just returned from my 5th trip to the Amazon, checking out the new boat that we'll be using for 2018. So I'm especially excited to share some personal stories and photography from that journey. I'm joined tonight by Steve Cox, International Expeditions founder and executive director, along with Christy Hill, who's our marketing manager. Now, many of you, I'm sure, are already familiar with International Expeditions, but just for those of you who aren't, or who haven't traveled with us in a while, International Expeditions has been inspiring travelers for nearly 4 decades. We always say that you can travel to places that are known for their culture and miss the nature, or you can travel to incredible natural places and not get a sense of the local culture. So what International Expeditions strives to do is to give you the whole story, the food, the wildlife, the nature, the current events, the local folklore. Did I mention food? It is dinner time. Just everything that we can do to make sure that you come away loving and are completely inspired with your own story to tell about the places we visit. And of course, not only are our journeys very immersive, they're also extremely inclusive. So our journeys include your transfers, all of your accommodations, almost all of your meals, every excursion, English-speaking guides, some of your tips. We also include a lot of pre-travel information to get you educated and prepared before you see a destination. So not only does International Expeditions travel to the 5 countries we're going to talk about tonight, but we're actually in 20 countries around the world. We offer a variety of travel styles to help you experience the world the way you want to. Now, of course, we're going to delve really deeply into our small ship voyages, but we also offer family fun options for families that want to, yes, see the world and experience incredible bucket list worthy places, but also learn a good bit along the way. Additionally, we offer great safari options, both escorted and privately curated options. I also would be remiss if I didn't point out that we have a whole host of safaris to Zambia, Botswana, and Namibia that we offer with no single supplement fees. And of course, we know our travelers, and especially you guys here tonight, are adventurous. Not only do most of our programs include things like hiking and kayaking, but we have some really exciting adventure options that can take you on the Inca or Salcante Trail, or tracking rhino on foot, or rappelling down waterfalls and more. But of course, you don't want to completely rough it. So we do actually have options that include wine and wildlife, and of course the local cuisine, so that you can be birding in the morning and visiting an incredible legendary Chilean vineyard at night. So now that we've talked just a little bit about who IE is, I want to jump right into our journeys, and while we're here tonight, to talk about our small ship options. Now, we have so many trips to cover. We have so much going on. We will go a little fast, but we want to make sure there's plenty of opportunity at the end to take your questions. So let's go first into our signature journey into the Peruvian Amazon. Now, I did say the Peruvian Amazon. Feel free to raise your hand if you thought, oh, it's the Amazon, they must be going to Brazil. But International Expeditions actually is in the Peruvian Amazon for all of our 38 years because it's less developed, so you have a better opportunity to be immersed in a more pristine rainforest environment. Not only does that mean seeing more wildlife and more rare sightings, but also getting a look at the cultures that have sprung up along the riverbanks. It's not the sort of developed, big, wide Amazon that you find in Brazil and down in Manaus. It's a much narrower, very, I always say it's the rainforest of your imagination. So International Expeditions' 10-day program runs 7 nights on the riverboat, plus a night in Lima before we embark. We fly into Iquitos and spend 600 miles on the Amazon and its tributaries with daily excursions, taking us to these wildlife areas and past river villages into the Pacaya Samaria Reserve. Now, of course, the question on everyone's mind is, what's the best time to go to the Amazon? You know, so many places have a wet season, a dry season, a rainy season. Well, this is a rainforest, and in Peru, it rains about 280, 300 days out of the year. So what you really need to consider is high water versus low water season. And as we said, the water level can fluctuate as much as 40 feet during the high water and the low water season. And you're always going to have amazing wildlife sightings regardless of what time of year you go. So the decision should be more around what you're looking for in your rainforest experience. If you want to do hiking, obviously you need to go in the low water season when there's more dry ground exposed. When I was just there 2 weeks ago, they're at the very end of the low water season moving toward the higher water. So there were creeks that just had a little trickle. You couldn't get into the excursion boats. But Angel, our expedition leader, actually said, oh, hey, do you remember the last time you were here? That Supe Creek where we saw the night owl monkeys. Here in a month or two, we'll be able to get back in there. So there are a lot of advantages to both. And International Expeditions actually has a lot of travelers who like to go in both seasons so that you can get those two different experiences. And of course, all of this is made possible thanks to our home base aboard Zafiro. Now I want to take a few minutes because we've just started talking about the Amazon. And Chris, you've worked with International Expeditions for several years, been on African safaris and the like, but you just recently went to the Amazon for the first time. And I'm just curious what your expectation of the destination was versus the reality of going for the first time.
Thanks, Emily. I was really impressed by how well suited the program is for a range of interests, from people who are not super outdoorsy to outdoor enthusiasts. I like being outdoors. I've always loved nature and wildlife, but I also like to be comfortable. I like to be well fed and get a hot shower when it's appropriate. And this program offers you the best of both worlds. A typical day in the life aboard our Amazon voyage contains, it follows a rhythm of certain excursions, good food, rest, entertainment, and education. So there really is something for everyone.
And I'm glad you pointed that out, Christy. I think a lot of people think about eco travel or nature travel and they think bugs and hot and sweat. So, you know, even though there is a certain element of rainforest and bugs and heat, when you go to the Amazon, that is such an important part, is having this wonderful home base to come back to every evening. And of course, for 2018 and beyond, International Expeditions has chartered the gorgeous Zafiro to offer our travelers a luxurious, wonderful home base. So I'm excited to take you on a quick little tour, starting with the top deck. Now this is the observation deck where we gather in the mornings before breakfast to look for wildlife, not just bird life, which is really active at that time of day, but also we got to see sloth and squirrel monkeys from the top deck. And of course, it's also a wonderful place during our siesta time to be able to grab one of those cushy loungers with a, I say with a book, but I normally took a nap as soon as I claimed my lounger. If you like to stay active during your vacation, of course, there is a small gym on board so that you can work out with an incredible view of the rainforest and riverbanks. Or you can join Romy for a lovely spa treatment. She offers massage, pedicures, and manicures. And what was really popular on my last voyage was couples massage. For those times when you don't want to take advantage of the outdoors, you can actually use the indoor lounge and bar. That's a great place to sit, edit your photography. And then in the bottom right, excuse me, bottom left, you can see the dining room where the chef has these fantastic meals that blend sort of international favorites with Peruvian flair and a real local flavor. I'm proud to say that about half of the fruits and vegetables and juices that you have along the way are actually purchased from the villagers as we pass. One day when we were out on excursion, the crew actually bought fish from a fisherman as we passed that they then prepared for us that night. It was delicious. Not only do you have a breakfast buffet and a nice casual lunch buffet, but dinners are seated, plated, 4-course extravaganzas. And of course, I have to point out that aboard Zafiro, we do include local beers, house wine, and pisco, which is the national liquor, as well as, of course, all the water and coffee that you need. So jumping into the actual suites themselves, there are the maximum group size aboard Zafiro is 38. We have one Zafiro suite, which is a massive 480 square feet with 180-degree windows, a private balcony, your own private jacuzzi tub. And if you see the couch over there, that's not only great as a nice seating area, but if you're coming with a family or you just want to triple your cabin, that is convertible into a bed. Now I can see we actually already have a couple of questions about the food on board that I would love to go ahead and address. We can accommodate essentially any diet, vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free. The only thing that we have issue addressing on board are kosher diets. So from the Zafiro, also on the upper deck, there are a range of suites that have a private balcony and sitting area outside. These are air conditioned and of course have their own facilities. On the lower deck, there are also the same size suites. However, they do not have a private balcony because you are on the lower deck. On the lower deck, we also have 2 master suites. Those are right at the bow, as you can see, and they feature 90-degree views. And of course, all of the suites, just pointing out a few things that you can see here, they all have these fantastic local touches, local woods, local crafts and art that just really evoke the era of Amazon exploration. Now, Christy, I wonder if you would just talk us through what a standard day is like. You talked earlier about the sort of rhythm of the days in the Amazon and what a variety of activities there were.
Certainly. It's a wonderful mixture of getting up, excited about the day, having really good food, going out on excursions, coming back, having opportunities to rest, going out again on excursions, having entertainment in the evenings. Emily mentioned the options for the spa, and so it's a great mixture of socializing with your like-minded travelers on board, plus interacting with the villagers on the village visits. But when I was thinking about this presentation, all of this, you know, sounds reasonable and good, but I always wondered, working here, what was it really, really like? So I thought the best way was just to let you know how this adventure stimulates all of your senses. What I love about the Amazon and IE is that even though we've been in this area of the world for nearly 40 years, it's always special and it's always exciting. And I hope you get that sense from us from the beginning to the end, from your thinking about going to your going and to your memories afterward. It truly is an amazing place. When you go, visually you see so many shades of green, 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 green everywhere, and wildlife. So there's monkeys and sloth and birds and caiman and so much more. So just imagine the wonderful soundtrack that creates, with monkeys howling and jumping between the trees and birds calling out. Our ELs and the naturalists are so skilled at locating and identifying this wildlife. I remember one day in particular on excursion, for instance, one of the naturalists was pointing out a bird, and we were all excitedly looking for it. Where's the bird? Where's the bird? And then I say, oh, wait a minute, I hear it, not realizing that that was the naturalist replicating the bird's call himself, which then the bird answered. And so I'm like, wow, these people are the real deal. The crew is just very passionate about their homeland, and their enthusiasm is so contagious. It also feels humid and warm. Since I am from the Southeast, that was not a huge adjustment for me. I didn't find it unnecessarily uncomfortable, and our materials do a great job of preparing you how best to dress. The crew on board lets you know each day what we're going to be doing that day, so you're never unaware of how you should be dressed. They always have you prepared. Also, that Emily mentioned the food on board with the fresh ingredients. I just wanted to reiterate that. I do love fruit, and the selection was so varied and abundant. We were also able to sample piranha from an excursion that we went. So they cooked the piranha, and believe me, when you're fishing for piranha, you know when a piranha is tugging on your bait. That's undeniable, and that by itself was really exciting. And the EL and the naturalist made sure that everyone caught piranha before we left the area. Taste-wise, it's a little bony for my taste, but how cool is it to say you sampled piranha from the Amazon River? I mean, it's pretty awesome. But probably my favorite thing in all of the activities, and it's such a rich experience being out, coming back, seeing what you see, hearing what you see, spending time on this wonderful riverboat as your home base. I love the village visits. We visited a school, we visited a shaman, and when we were at the school, we sang songs with the children, and we danced, we did the hokey pokey, and we practiced saying their names, they practiced saying our names, and just the looks on their faces, their smiles, their eyes, it was just really special to connect with them on that level, and I think that represents the real gift of travel.
You're bringing back a lot of good memories, Christy. As she touched on, the activities are really, really varied. So in a given day, you could not only be piranha fishing, you could be kayaking on an Amazonian creek. You could be out in a speedboat searching riverbanks for life, or going into the rainforest on a hike, depending on, of course, if you go in high water or low water season. But of course, nothing is overly strenuous. I know there's some people who are a little concerned about the level of activity given the heat. You do always have the option, if there's a hike, of just staying and doing an excursion boat ride, or if you'd rather not kayak, doing an excursion boat ride. If you'd rather not do an excursion boat ride, maybe you'd just like to stay on board and take advantage of the scenery, or there were several people who opted out of different excursions so that they could have some time in the spa. It is still your vacation, of course, and we respect that and want to make sure that you get everything out of the experience that you want to. And of course, when we are talking about the Amazon, there is so much wildlife, from prehistoric Watsons and monkeys and bubblegum pink river dolphins. I will always remember, we talked about the passion of the home that the crew and the naturalists have. They tell amazing stories about, the pink river dolphins at one point 50 years ago were nearly endangered. So some ingenious people along the river villages made up a story that, according to local folklore, the pink river dolphins come to life at night and take the form of a human, and they'll come into villages and take off with your women. And that made people scared of the pink river dolphins, And so they protected them, and they no longer killed them or ate them. So these are the kinds of fun stories that you learn alongside the really rich biological information and scientific information they can give you. So we talked about the area. I do want to just show another deck plan to give you a sense of the cabin layout and the deck spaces. Again, there are about 38 passengers maximum on board Zafiro. You have an expedition leader, 3 naturalists, and then a crew of 23 that are taking care of you. So you're extremely well taken care of. Right now, there are departures available through the end of 2019. I will say that we are getting a lot of people who are really interested in that Zafiro suite. So if you are committed to that and you have a date that you're really looking for, please go ahead and give us a call so that you can make sure you get the date and the cabin category that you want. Now, a question, we have a lot of questions that came up that we want to make sure we address too in terms of necessary travel documentation and vaccinations. Now, there are no vaccinations required for American, or actually North American travelers to go to Peru. However, we always say consult your doctor to make sure there's nothing he recommends based on your medical history. Now, if you really want to take advantage of your time in Peru, we do offer extensions to Lima, Machu Picchu, the Rainforest Canopy, and the Nazca Lines. And of course, right now, in addition to some other offers that we have, you can save $1,000 per person when you combine the Amazon voyage with the Machu Picchu extension on select dates. And you might be thinking, is this trip for me? Is this something that would interest me? So we really recommend this trip for nature and wildlife enthusiasts. And if you're a birder, this is an incredible journey. We actually saw, the last time I was there, 175 species of birds. Solo travelers, International Expeditions offers cabins on every departure with no single supplement fees. So solo travelers make up typically about 20 to 25% of our Amazon voyage. And also families. Now, I say that with a couple of caveats. There are some people who say, well, I want to travel with families, or I don't want to travel with families. So while we welcome kids on any departure, you know, if you look at times when kids would be out of school, say spring break or in the summer, that's typically when families will travel with International Expeditions. If you're going in January, February, March, you're less likely to have children on board or other families on board. And then my other caveat is, although the minimum age to travel on the Amazon voyage is 8, I would say think about your children. There are long days. It is wildlife observation, and a lot of it's through binoculars as opposed to other places where the wildlife is very, very close. So just think about your children and if that is something that they would enjoy. We have staff members who have taken their children as young as 9 who had an absolutely incredible time. So now that we've talked a little bit about the Amazon, and I could go on forever, let's head a little bit north and 600 miles out in the Pacific to the Galapagos Islands, which frankly is my favorite place on the planet. So International Expeditions has offered Galapagos journeys for almost as long as we've been in the Amazon. I think 2 years less, if I'm not mistaken. What makes our journey really special, in addition to, of course, the incredible magical islands, is that our guests actually enjoy the archipelago's best guest-to-guide ratio. Our small groups of 26 to 32 guests are actually accompanied by 3 naturalists, and they're in 3 zodiacs. So just imagine that unprecedented, personal, intimate feel as you're on the islands and exploring with 10 other people. International Expeditions has 2 Galapagos itineraries seeing a different variety of islands. So we do that because the Galapagos National Park Service has certain regulations in place to keep areas from becoming over touristy or over visited. Now, what you'll find, because we have a maximum group size of just 32, that there are sites that we can visit that you're not going to be able to on larger ships. So the primary difference, well, actually, first let me tell you the primary similarities. Regardless of which itinerary you travel on, you will get to see the giant tortoises in the highlands of Santa Cruz. You'll get to see the Charles Darwin Research Station and spend time there. You'll, of course, get to see the incredible Galapagos penguins. You'll get to snorkel with sea lions and sea turtles and just a huge variety of wildlife. The primary differences in the two itineraries really depend on what you want to see in terms of which is better than the other. So the itinerary that we have now really moves west to east and gives you a good swath, the oldest island, Hispaniola, and the youngest, Fernandina. And there's some great whale watching in the fall between Fernandina and Isabela. But if you look at our remote northern and central islands itinerary, there's some really special elements as well. So Genovesa there at the top, Tower Island, is the only place in the Galapagos Islands where you can see red-footed boobies. It's also a fantastic place to see short-eared owls, as well as down at Floriana. So you may have seen this movie, The Galapagos Affair, on Netflix. But this is actually one of the few places where there's been a population of settlers in the islands, and there was a whole mystery surrounding the people that lived there back in the early 1900s, if I'm not mistaken. So, and then of course, one of my favorite places actually is Mosquera. It's so small that there's not even really a defined trail by the national park. So it's like being on this uninhabited island that you just get to wander freely. And that, I feel like, was really special. Again, such a frequent question. When is the best time to visit the Galapagos Islands? There isn't a gigantic fluctuation in air or water temperatures, but a lot of it has to do with the different kinds of wildlife you want to see. So, for example, I love being in the water on our daily snorkeling excursions. The best time for me to go, even though the water's a little cooler, is actually in October, November. That's when the Humboldt and the Cromwell currents make the water really cold, but it's also really rich with little fish and plankton that the sea lions and all the various marine life in Galapagos eats. So when you're in the water, the wildlife is extremely active. And that just makes those excursions so exciting. Also, fortunately, the Evolution has shorty wetsuits. So when you hit those temperatures where the water's, between 70 and 75, I'm used to swimming in the Gulf. So that's awfully cold for me. Our 7-night home in Galapagos is the Evolution, and while she carries just 32 guests maximum, she has tons and tons of public space. In fact, Evolution has the most public space and the largest cabins of any yacht in her class. And that small group size is just absolutely crucial. I mentioned that we can go places that larger vessels can't go, but we also have a lot of freedom to follow with our small group size to really take advantage of local events. So, for example, one time last year, we were coming back from a snorkeling excursion and encountered blue whales, the largest mammals on the planet. And we were able to just sit and spend time with them and video them. And when you're, on a cruise ship with 100, 150 people who have this flotilla of zodiacs, that's just something you can't really take advantage of. And we're extremely excited. The Evolution just came out of a 2-month dry dock, and has been completely refurbished, new cabins, new public spaces, a new coffee stands where you can take advantage of some of the locally grown coffee. Now, just like in the Amazon, the Galapagos has a certain rhythm to the day. So we try to get up very early and be the first people out on the island so that we can be there when the wildlife is most active. It's also when there's the best light for photography. From those morning excursions, we'll come back and you can either swim from the beach or grab your snorkeling equipment and have some time in the water before lunch. Now, I love the days when we get to have an al fresco lunch, and I especially recommend when you travel with us, taking the Ecuadorian ceviche and sprinkling a little popcorn in it, like the locals do. Just like in the Amazon, you'll then have some time to relax and unwind from the heat of the sun before we go back out. And again, we've built in variety. So if you don't want to snorkel, you have an opportunity to maybe take an excursion boat ride or a hike. And then we love ending up our days with a nice sunset stroll on the beach with huge numbers of sea lions before a briefing and a fantastic dinner. Now, again, just talking about some of the excursions, you normally spend several hours at a time, but it's not overly strenuous. Even though a walk might be a mile, it's a mile with interpretation and photography and stopping to chat with the naturalist who spots something or tells you about the local flora or the lava cactuses. Similarly, you may have a slightly longer, an hour or so to snorkel, but if you get tired, put your fist up, the excursion boats are there, and you can hop out of the water into a Zodiac. And of course, I mentioned already, I loved our twice daily snorkeling excursions. But I would also say there are a lot of people who say, well, I don't swim or I don't snorkel. I don't want to, maybe this isn't the trip for me. We actually have, normally we'll divide into two groups, more experienced snorkelers and people that just want to go from the beach. Just put the snorkel mask on and look down into the water. Our guides are fantastic about making sure that you feel very, very comfortable in the water. And there is, of course, so much to see. And of course, we always joke, there is the very first speech you get to the Galapagos, when you get to the Galapagos Islands, is don't touch the wildlife. But I always joke that the wildlife does not get that same speech. So you could be sitting down taking photos, and the next thing you know, you've got sea lions crawling up to you, or a bird landing on your hand to try and get into your water bottle. It really is just the most incredible place. Again, just a quick look at our deck plan. Our cabins are spread out on the 3 decks. Your A deck, those A1, A2, A3, average 263 square feet. And then the other cabins on C and D deck are right at 175 square feet. Right now, we are taking reservations for departures. There's basically monthly departures year-round, and of course, some will go faster than others. For example, the Christmas trips normally sell out about 2 years in advance. There is still space for 2018, though, if you are looking to travel over the holiday season. Again, just to take a really quick look at some frequently asked questions. No vaccinations are required to travel to Ecuador for North Americans, but of course consult your doctor. We have extensions available to Machu Picchu, Guayaquil, and Quito. Again, also for all of our 2018 departures, if you combine your Galapagos voyage with a Machu Picchu extension, you save $1,000. And we really think that wildlife and nature enthusiasts will love this trip. Of course, solo travelers because of the Wave Single Supplement, and families. This is a nice, active, fun family trip, but also photographers. And while all of International Expeditions trips are great for photography, we all look like professional wildlife photographers in the Galapagos. The wildlife sits, it poses, it doesn't walk off on you when you're trying to line up a shot. It really is an amazing place to get fantastic photography. So again, moving north and a little bit closer to home to Cuba. Now, anyone who has been to Cuba before or has looked into going to Cuba knows that sometimes the accommodations are not up to U.S. standards. And of course, if you've been looking at those big cruise ships, you know that most of them go into Havana for like half a day. So you do not get this incredible experience. We put together our Cuba voyage so that you have incredible, comfortable, wonderful accommodations while still getting to see a huge swath of the island. We travel aboard the Panorama, which has a maximum of just 46 guests, 23 cabins across 3 decks. We have a great open bridge policy on the Panorama. Now, one of the real fun things about Cuba and people-to-people travel in Cuba is getting to meet the locals and chat with people. So while at that stop at the edge of the island, we love being able to really chat and talk about navigating in the Caribbean, talk more with the crew. They're all just wonderful, lovely people. And of course, the Panorama also features huge outdoor spaces so that you can really enjoy your time at sea that you spend, and also fantastic food. The Panorama is actually a Greek flagged ship, and the food on board is this wonderful mix of European favorites, local fare, and even though you're getting that on board, most of our lunches are actually spent at paladars, which are the local privately held restaurants. These are the best places to get great food in Cuba. And of course, again, you have fantastic public spaces on board Panorama so that when you're on board, you do have some place, if you'd rather not be in your cabin, to gather with your local guests, chat with your guides, chat with your expedition leaders. But of course, it's Cuba, and you want to see as much as possible. So we include artists, studio visits, going into the wonderful Vinales Valley, where all of the tobacco farms are, and also the Magotes. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. If you haven't been to Cuba, I don't know that you can get a real sense for how prevalent and important music is to the rhythm of the island. Everything from choirs to in clubs to the people that you encounter on the street, there is always music. But within our small group Cuba voyage, we also get to do really interesting things like not just riding in those classic American cars, but stopping in garages to see how they're maintained, or pulling over, again, taking advantage of local conditions. We saw kids having a baseball game and just got to kind of pull over and cheer for them and take photos. And whether it's Havana and the Tropicana or going out and having lunch with a local farmer, we're really trying to make sure you get the most out of your time in Cuba as humanly possible. Again, Panorama has their 23 cabins spread out across those 3 decks with a huge amount of public space there in the main deck. And what's really exciting, if you're considering a Cuba voyage for 2018, we do currently have a special buy one, get one 50% off. So there's so much being said about Cuba right now. Steve, you've been working with Legal Travel to Cuba since 2003. So I wonder if you would join us and just address some of the things that people are hearing about Cuba or that they're curious to know about Cuba.
Well, yes, thanks, Emily. We'll talk a few minutes about this. We're a sponsoring organization for Cuba, which means we can travel send Americans to Cuba legally with the proper documentation. And people-to-people category of license, essentially that is engagement with Cuban people. And that means you're going to learn something from the Cubans you meet, and the Cubans will learn something from you. So it's not a difficulty or a problem at all. Also, note that we do have these great escorted programs, including the ship, but you can travel as an individual. With us as a sponsoring organization, we do provide the visas and the letters of authorization and all the things you need to know and how to go legally. The rule changes, the quick answer on that is that there have actually not been any rule changes. There was a speech that said there would be, but thus far, as of at least 3 weeks ago, the Department of Treasury has not received a formal request to change those rules. But even if it did, it doesn't matter because of us being the sponsoring organization, providing the documentation for you to go, whether it's a group trip or a custom individual trip. 2 people for 2 days would work. There are also things we could talk about if we had more time about the travel warning that's out, which is a bit political. There's not been any tourists involved. Our government does not believe the Cubans did it anyway. They just don't know who did. And there's not been any of those sonic events for months now. So that's not really a problem, and we work with Cuba every single day and would love to have you go with us.
Well, thank you, Steve. So while we're on the topic of Panorama and this lovely ship, I know that one of the things we really wanted to introduce to you guys tonight is a pilot program we're launching in Panama and Costa Rica that will also be aboard the Panorama. Steve, you've been working on this program. Would you mind just previewing it for us?
Yes. This, as Emily says, is part of our program development process, which is generally from start to finish about 3 years. Now, within the second and third year, we try to do pilot trips where we test what we believe will work on paper to be sure it does on practice. And this is before it'll eventually go to the general traveling public. So with Panama and Costa Rica, we're beginning the second year of this, and we'll be launching a pilot program for a team that we've got, which you might consider joining in February of next year. So this trip is unlike any other trip that exists between Panama and Costa Rica. Even though there are a couple of boats that will go that route, none of them are able to do what we're planning to do. This one would be really good for nature people, for people who are just generally interested in the destination. We're going to some very remote areas where the wildlife is outstanding, but there's really difficult access unless you go by boat. And we figure if you're going to go by boat on your accommodation, it might as well be really, really good. We've got some of the best leadership enlisted for this for next February from both Costa Rica and Panama. So it's heavily loaded, but you won't see this on their website or anything published, but I'm giving you a preview on it now just in case you would want to go. And if so, I guess we could send you an itinerary by email, or you can call me and we will fill you in on all the details. The general public, unlikely to see it until 2019, but you can get a leg up. The red carpet will be out for you. So the other program that is further along in our program development is in India. And this particular trip is one that our first pilot went this past March. I was there, and it went extremely well. There were some things that we adjusted, and we'll be doing our next round of this, the first of the year, in 2018. The general public won't see this until 2019. But this is a different trip than normally people would see in India. And I thought at first that it's so unique that it may be for people who've been to India before, but have not gone to these other areas. But it turns out that this gives a great first trip to India. And if you just added maybe the Taj Mahal or maybe Jaipur or something like that, it could be the one and only India trip you ever make, because it's really that good. It goes to the far eastern part of India. 5 nights of that trip is on board this riverboat. This river is called Brahmaputra. It actually changes names when it enters different countries, but it was begins in the Himalayas. And if it's not just a cloudy day or something, you see the Himalayas in the background from this river. It's very wide and goes through an area that is not heavy overpopulated. It's very green and beautiful. We're off that boat 2 or 3 times, 4 times a day on our time there. 5 nights on board the ship. Very nice, very spacious, a great crew, and a beautiful location. Also on this trip, we spend 2 nights in a lodge, an eco lodge on the banks of a different river in Kaziranga National Park. This park is very famous around the world because of the Asian one-horned rhino. This is about the only place you can still see them. But it's not like seeing a rhino in Africa, where you might see just 1 or 2 and feel very fortunate to do that. At one time, in one vista, looking from right to left, I counted well over 30 of them, mothers with babies, just from in a 180-degree view. And at the same time, there were wild Asian elephants and buffalo and 2 different species of rare deer and wild boar, all in one view with short grasses, tall grasses, rivers, forest, and mountains all at the same time. Kaziranga is also very, very well known for its birds and tea plantations nearby, as you see here. But also it has one of the most dense population of tiger in India. But because of the tall grasses, forests, mountains, we'll not talk about seeing the tiger, even though they are there and it does happen. Lastly, on the trip, we've got a couple of nights in Calcutta, which was a very pleasant surprise to me because I've not been there before. I just thought of the black hole, but that doesn't mean the city. It just means literally there was a black hole. But it was very green, lots of remnants of parks from the British days when the British East India Company was headquartered there. And so it was a great, great overall trip. We've got a few extra special things, and you know about it now by me telling you, but if you have an interest in going, we do have just a very few, I mean, count on one hand, slots left on the pilot programs next year. Not a big group goes. We're only going to take 14, 16, possibly 18 max at any one time. But what we learn, what you do, what you evaluate from this trip goes into the finished product launching in 2019. So that covers the 2 programs under program development. And in a way, tonight, we're kind of recruiting. Who we like to see on our pilot programs are people who are well-traveled, who've been different places in the world, who like nature, but it does not have to be exclusive. to that. But we like people who are opinion makers back in your home city, because what we learn, what you do, goes into the trip, but we know that the end result's going to be great, and you'll be someone who will spread the word to other people you come in contact with. So that works for both India and for Panama, Costa Rica.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. And what we've been talking about tonight have been international expeditions, escorted small group programs, where our expedition leader is with you from the moment you land in country until the time you leave. But what we also can do is, via our partner companies, we have options to go to Antarctica, as well as a Panama-only small yacht option. If you have any interest in those, please do give us a call at, we'll give you the contact information here in a little bit, but we're at 800-633-4734, and we can put you in contact with someone who can really get to know you, your travel style, and help you book those options as well. So we have been through so much, and thank you for hanging in here with us. We're going to start addressing some of your questions. There are several people who have asked for a replay. Yes, we have in fact recorded this, and we'll be sure that we get either the answers to your questions or the link to you. So someone has asked about the inclusions, the drink inclusions aboard Zafiro, and that local wine, beer, pisco sour drinks, that is actually at any time of the day. So let's see here. Some of the other questions. There was a question about changing money and whether or not you can do it on the ships or whether you need to do it elsewhere. It doesn't specify exactly which journey you're asking about, but just in general, we recommend that you do not exchange your money on the ships. Panorama in Cuba will normally have some CUCs, which is the Cuban currency that tourists and travelers can use, but not huge amounts. Typically, you'll have sufficient time at the airport, or a lot of the hotel front desks, like the Swiss Hotel in Lima where we stay, can exchange money for you. Remember, of course, that our trips are extremely inclusive, so you don't need to have a lot of extra money except for your shopping. Let's see here. It looks like we have, okay, so we're just clarifying that the money question was for the Cuba trip. So yes, you can exchange money at the airport, but like I said, the Panorama will have money on board, and then you'll have some time just in various places if you start to run low on funds. I will remind you, if you have questions, please feel free to put those into the question box in your control panel at the right. We do have several people who are very interested in Panama, Costa Rica pilot program, and we will be sure that you receive information on that. Let's see if there are any other questions in here. Again, just reiterating, in most instances, we can accommodate dietary requirements, gluten-free, vegetarian, vegan. That is all very common, and we are able to accommodate those. The only dietary need or diet where we normally will have issue is in a kosher diet, just because of the small size of the ships. Let's see here. See if they have any other questions. It looks like there are a few other really specific questions about departures. So we will make sure that you get an answer to those via email and also reach out. We'll give just one more chance. I'll say that, again, we've had a lot of people ask about family departures, non-family departures. We really will welcome children on any of our departures. There are none that are specifically set aside as only being for families. Again, if you're looking for a family-oriented trip with other children on board, you're best served looking at summer departure dates. If you want to avoid having kids on your departure, we would recommend looking at January, February, and then September, October, November, when kids are typically going to be in schools. There have also been several questions about solo accommodations. On our Amazon, Galapagos, and Cuba voyages, we do offer waived single supplement options, lost my train of thought. So that's on all of those departures. We do offer a limited number of cabins that are available with no single supplement fees. If we've reached our maximum on that, we will work with you to try and match you with another single traveler who is willing to share. Okay, perfect. So I think we have addressed all the questions except for some specific ones that we'll reach out to you with via email tomorrow. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope that I speak on behalf of Christy and Steve when I say it's been a real pleasure. And gosh, all of these places I think we could go on about for 2 hours each. So the fact that we could cover 5 of our small ship options in an hour, we were really zipping through those. So please do reach out to us either on our website, give us a call at 800-633-4734, or talk to your travel professional if you would prefer to go that route. We would love to chat with you, tell you some more of our personal stories and experiences, and we would love to have you on an international expeditions journey soon. Thank you again for joining us, and good night.
And this will conclude our webinar. Goodbye, everyone.